It was 2:12 p.m. when my CFO took my bonus away like he was canceling a lunch order. We were in the small finance conference room on the second floor, the one with the glass wall that made every meeting feel like a display. I still had my laptop in my hands because I'd been pulled in straight from a billing review. My calendar said comp update, Marianne, like it was supposed to be routine. Grant Halvorsen sat at the head of the table, jacket on, sleeves perfect, hair not a strand out of place. He looked younger than the job, like someone who'd practiced confidence in front of a mirror. To his right was an HR rep named Leela, holding a thin folder and a pen like she was there to witness, not help. 2 directors from finance were also there. Not my leaders, not anyone who knew what I actually did. Just observers. Grant didn't waste time. He slid a single sheet of paper across the table toward me with 2 fingers and a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. After 16 years, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, you should be grateful you're still here. I blinked once because my brain needed a second to catch up to the sting. He tapped the paper with the tip of his pen. Bonuses are for people driving new growth. Then he turned the page slightly so the number was facing me like a verdict. Bonus, $0. Not reduced, not adjusted. 0. For a moment I felt heat crawl up my neck and behind my ears, like my body wanted to react even if my face refused. I could hear the hum of the air vent. I could hear someone's chair shift. Nobody spoke. Nobody even cleared their throat. I read the sheet again, slow, like the number might change if I stared long enough. My name is Marianne Holt. I was 46 years old that year, and I had spent 16 years at Kestrel Point Systems building a reputation for being the person who fixed things before they broke. I looked up at Grant, still calm. Is this a mistake? Grant's smile widened just a little, the way people smile when they think you're naive. No, he said, this is alignment. Alignment. That word landed like a clean slap. It sounded like strategy, like logic, like nobody could argue with it without sounding emotional. I kept my voice steady. What does that mean exactly? Grant leaned back, folding his hands like he was explaining something simple to a child. It means we're aligning compensation with impact. And frankly, Marianne, your role is support. He paused, letting the room absorb it. Your operations support, he added, not revenue. I felt something inside me go very still. Because if you've ever been told you don't count, you know the exact feeling. Not anger first, not sadness first. It's that sharp, quiet drop in your stomach where you realize the rules have changed, and nobody bothered to tell you. Leela from HR didn't look at me. Her eyes stayed on her folder. The directors stared at the table like it might open up and swallow them. That kind of silence only happens when everyone is relieved it's happening to someone else. I nodded once because I knew better than to argue in a room designed to make me look small. But I also knew what that bonus was meant for. My daughter's fall tuition payment was due in 10 days. 10. I had a reminder set on my phone because the number scared me, and the mortgage auto draft hit every Friday morning like a punch you can't dodge. I didn't live recklessly. I lived carefully. I planned. I saved. I stayed, and Grant was looking at me like 16 years of staying meant nothing. I pushed the paper back toward him, smooth and quiet. Okay, I said. Grant's eyebrows lifted, almost disappointed, like he wanted a fight. Like he wanted me to give him a reason to label me difficult. Instead, I stood up. My hands didn't shake until my fingers left the edge of the table. I closed my laptop without slamming it. I nodded at the room, because I'm not the kind of person who burns bridges just to feel warm for a minute. As I walked out, I caught my reflection in the glass wall. A woman in a plain navy blouse, hair pinned back, posture straight. The kind of woman people assume will keep swallowing disrespect because she's steady. In the hallway, my breathing finally changed. The air felt thinner. My throat tightened like I'd been holding something back for years and it was trying to come up. But what Grant didn't know, what he couldn't see from his spreadsheets, was that I had something he didn't. Trust. The kind that doesn't show up in a quarterly deck. Because the biggest client he loved to name drop at every all-hands meeting didn't trust Grant. They didn't trust Evan. They didn't trust the sales team. They trusted me. As I reached my desk, my phone buzzed with a reminder I'd set weeks ago. 4 p.m. Falcon Ridge renewal call. My name was on the invite. Grant's wasn't, and in that moment, standing there with my bonus cut to 0 and my heart still steady in my chest, I realized something that made my hands stop shaking. By 4 p.m., someone was going to learn what operations support actually meant. To understand why that meeting hit me so hard, you have to understand what kind of work I did, and why it was so easy for people like Grant to pretend it didn't matter. Kestrel Point Systems wasn't a glamorous company. We built infrastructure software for large industrial businesses. The kind of tools nobody talks about until they fail. The kind of products that sit behind everything, making sure money, data, and approvals move the way they should. I ran enterprise billing and contract operations. In simple terms, I made sure what we promised matched what we charged. I made sure invoices followed the contract. I made sure renewals didn't slip through the cracks. I made sure credits didn't turn into lawsuits. I made sure our biggest clients didn't get embarrassed in front of their auditors because we sent the wrong numbers at the wrong time. It wasn't flashy work. It was the kind of work that only gets noticed when someone stops doing it. For years, that was my pattern. I fixed problems before anyone heard about them. I caught issues before they became disasters, and because of that, leadership started thinking disasters didn't exist. They thought things ran smoothly because the company was maturing, because systems were strong, because executives were leading. But really, things ran smoothly because I was there, quietly holding threads together. I didn't start at the top. I worked my way into the role over time. I learned every contract template, every odd client exception, every internal shortcut that could break something if it was handled wrong. I knew which customers needed careful wording and which ones would punish you for one missed decimal. I'm not saying that to sound proud. I'm saying it because I earned it. Once, about 5 years ago, I prevented a $1.3 million clawback. A mismatch had slipped into a renewal contract. Tiny wording, big impact. It would have triggered a repayment clause if the client's legal team caught it after billing started. I caught it on a Tuesday night at 9:40, alone in my office, and fixed it before the document went out. Nobody threw me a party. They just didn't have a crisis. Another time, I stayed overnight to rebuild a billing run before quarter close. If we missed it, one of our major clients would have had to explain a revenue gap to their board. I didn't do it for praise. I did it because I couldn't stand the idea of being the reason they lost trust in us. That was my real job. Protect the company's trust. Then, Grant Halvorsen arrived 2 years ago. He was the kind of CFO who wore confidence like a fragrance, sharp suits, clean slides, always talking about margin and story. He loved dashboards. He loved summaries. He loved numbers that looked good in a meeting. He didn't sit with the billing team. He didn't listen to client calls. He didn't ask why certain customers had special terms. He just saw cost centers and leverage points. And because he spoke in smooth sentences, people assumed he was right. My bonus used to be the one thing that made me feel seen, not the money itself, even though I needed it. The bonus was a signal that the company understood my impact even if they didn't talk about it. Taking it away told me something clear. I was being positioned as an easy cut. And it wasn't random that it happened the same day as the Falcon Ridge renewal. Falcon Ridge Industries was our $850K account, the one Grant loved to brag about. But that renewal wasn't simple. It had custom billing terms I designed after their last CFO nearly walked away from us. We had made mistakes back then, and I spent weeks repairing the relationship. I built a structure that worked for them, and I documented it so it wouldn't break again. Only a few people truly understood it. Grant wasn't one of them. I sat at my desk after that comp meeting and looked at the 4 p.m. reminder again. The words felt heavier now, and that's when I made a decision that surprised even me. I was done begging to be seen. If my value was going to matter, it would matter because the truth forced people to see it. Not because I asked nicely. I didn't cry at my desk. I didn't storm into Grant's office. I didn't send a dramatic email to HR with words like unfair and disrespect. I just sat there, very still, with that comp sheet in front of me, and I read it like it was evidence. Because once someone tells you to your face that 16 years of work is support, you stop hearing words the way you used to. You start hearing intent. At the bottom of the page, under the number that said 0, there were neat little phrases meant to make the cut sound clean. Role simplification. Centralized approvals. Single point of contact. Those weren't compensation terms. They were a plan. They were the kind of words leadership uses when they want to remove a person without saying remove. A slow push, dressed up like progress. I opened our internal workflow system, the one we used for approvals, billing holds, contract exceptions. It wasn't fancy. It was old. It was dependable. And it ran half the company whether executives admitted it or not. I clicked into the approval queue that had my name on it for years, and that's where I saw it. My name was still there on the old items, like a footprint, but on the active flows, the ones that mattered going forward, there was a new owner assigned. Evan Pierce. Grant's finance manager. Early 30s. Always smiling, always dressed like he was going somewhere better after work. The kind of person who called everyone team and asked questions that sounded innocent but weren't. He'd been hovering around my work for weeks, asking where things lived, asking how approvals worked, asking what Falcon Ridge usually expects. Every question felt polite. Every question was a measurement, and now he was assigned to my approvals like I was already gone. I felt that same heat rise again, but this time it wasn't shock. It was clarity. The bonus cut wasn't a punishment. It was a signal. A way to tell me, accept less. Stay quiet. Don't make noise while we move your job to someone else. I minimized the system screen and pulled up my last performance review. 5 months earlier, my CEO, Alan Whitmore, had written, "Marianne is a stabilizing force and a key risk mitigator for our enterprise accounts." Risk mitigator. That was the polite executive way of saying, she keeps us from getting sued. I opened another folder, renewal notes for Falcon Ridge. Emails, meeting summaries, the billing exception matrix I built after their last contract fight. I kept everything in a tight structure. Not because I was paranoid, but because I had learned the hard way that companies forget who saved them. Then, I opened the folder I rarely touched, the one buried deep in my drive. I called it Red Flags. Inside were contract addendums, approval threads, and key documents I'd saved over the years, anything that showed who agreed to what and when. I started keeping that folder after watching a coworker get blamed for a bad contract term the VP had personally approved. When the pressure came, leadership didn't protect her. They protected themselves. I promised myself that would never happen to me. I clicked into the Falcon Ridge contract file and scrolled until I found the addendum. Addendum C. The line was right where I remembered it, like a quiet lock on a door. Operational owner Marianne Holt. Required sign-off for billing exceptions and renewal confirmations. Required. Not optional, not a courtesy, not a nice-to-have. Written. The kind of clause nobody reads until it's too late. I sat back in my chair and stared at the ceiling for a long moment, feeling the weight of what I'd been carrying. I had protected this company for 16 years. I had covered mistakes, smoothed client anger, fixed broken handoffs between sales and finance. I'd done it because I thought loyalty was mutual, but Grant was treating loyalty like a weakness. I looked at the clock in the corner of my screen. 3:02 p.m. Less than an hour until Falcon Ridge. I stood up, walked to my office door, and closed it softly. Not to hide. To think. I took one slow breath, then another, and I made a choice that felt like stepping onto solid ground. I was not going to cover for Grant anymore. If he wanted to claim my work, he could also own the consequences of not understanding it. And if he wanted to erase me, he was going to learn what happened when the person holding the details stopped holding them. At 3:07 p.m., Grant appeared at my desk like we were on good terms. He didn't knock on the side of my cubicle wall like most people did. He just stopped at the corner of my workspace, angled his body toward me, and smiled like he was doing me a favor. "Marianne," he said, bright and casual, "I'll handle the Falcon Ridge call today." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. He kept talking, smooth as ever. Finance needs to lead the value story. Denise is new on their side. We want the message to be consistent. Then he added, like it was obvious, "Just forward me your notes." I looked up at him and studied his face. Not angry, not nervous, just sure. Like my work was a file he could borrow, a role he could wear for an hour. I kept my voice calm. "The notes are in the client record. And I'll be on the call as usual." Grant's smile didn't move, but his eyes sharpened. He leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice while still making it feel like a normal chat. "Marianne, don't make this harder." There it was. The friendly mask slipping just enough to show what was underneath. "We're evolving," he said. "Either you evolve or you get left behind." I felt the words land in my chest with a quiet thud. Because when someone says that to you in a workplace, it isn't advice. It's a warning. Grant straightened, patted the edge of my desk once, like I was a dog that needed calming, and walked away. I watched him go, then I turned back to my screen and waited. I didn't have to wait long. At 3:19 p.m., an email hit my inbox. Subject: Updated attendee list for Falcon Ridge call. It was from Evan Pierce. HR was copied. Grant was copied. I opened it and scanned the names. Grant Halvorsen, added. Evan Pierce, added. Marianne Holt, removed. The humiliation wasn't loud this time. It was clean, quiet, official. The kind that makes you doubt yourself for a split second because nobody is yelling, but you're still being pushed out of your own work. I felt my face go hot again, but I didn't stand up. I didn't march anywhere. I didn't give them a scene to gossip about. Instead, I did what I always did. I handled it like a risk. I clicked reply, and I wrote one line. Who will be providing operational confirmation on the billing terms per Addendum C? That was it. No emotion, no accusation, just a question that forced the truth to show itself. Then I attached a single screenshot, the relevant paragraph from the addendum. Nothing dramatic, just the clause with my name and the words required sign-off. I reread the email once to make sure it sounded professional. Then I hit send. And I stopped. That was the hard part, not sending it. Waiting after sending it, because silence is terrifying to people who rely on control. 2 minutes passed, then 3. At 3:27 p.m., Evan replied, Thanks, Marianne. We'll discuss internally. No answer, no confirmation, just a stall. Which told me everything I needed to know. They didn't understand the terms, and they were hoping to move forward anyway. I sat back and opened the meeting link for the 4 p.m. call. I didn't click join yet. I just stared at the empty pre-call screen with my camera off, my mic muted, like I was watching a storm line move closer on a radar. My phone lit up with a short message from Grant. "Don't complicate this. We just need your support." Support. Again. He still thought I'd rush in and patch the hole he'd created. He still thought I'd protect him the way I always had, even after he cut my bonus to 0 and tried to erase me from my own client. I didn't reply. I looked at the time. 3:41 p.m. 19 minutes. I placed my hands on the desk, steady, and I made one more quiet decision. If Falcon Ridge asked for me, I would answer. But I would not rescue Grant's ego. I would protect the contract. I would protect the truth. And if that truth embarrassed someone, it wouldn't be me. At exactly 4 p.m., the Falcon Ridge call began. I joined anyway. Not because I wanted to sneak around, because the contract required my confirmation, and I wasn't about to let my company stumble into a mess and then point at me later and say I failed to support. My camera stayed off. My mic stayed muted. I listened. Grant's voice came through first, strong and upbeat, like he was starting a sales pitch at a conference. "Denise, thanks again for making the time," he said. "We're excited to renew this partnership and talk about the value we're driving for Falcon Ridge." Evan chimed in right after him, like an echo with nicer teeth. "Absolutely. We've got a few streamlined options that improve alignment and reduce friction." I almost smiled at that word again, alignment. On the other side of the call, I heard two voices I knew well. First was Marcia Liu, Falcon Ridge's procurement lead. She'd been on these calls for years. She was calm, organized, and she never wasted words. Then there was a new voice. Female, steady, older than Evan's energy, but not soft. Denise Calder, their new CFO. Grant didn't know Denise. I could tell by the way he kept talking, filling space, trying to control the tone. He went on about pricing tiers and strategic partnership. He mentioned our roadmap. He dropped a few numbers. He tried to sound like the person Falcon Ridge should trust with money. 2 minutes in, Denise stopped him. "Grant," she said, polite but direct, "before we discuss pricing, I need confirmation on our billing exceptions." Grant's tone stayed smooth. "Of course. We're happy to confirm," Denise continued, not letting him steer. "The exceptions we negotiated last year, the ones tied to project phases and audit timing, I want confirmation those terms will remain unchanged." Grant laughed lightly, like it was easy. Yes, we can confirm that." Denise didn't raise her voice. She didn't sound angry. She just made the room colder with one sentence. "I want that confirmed by Marianne Holt." Silence, not the normal kind of silence where someone's muted, the heavy kind where people are suddenly aware they're being tested. Grant hesitated just a fraction too long. Then he tried to recover. "Marianne is internal operations," he said. "She's not on this call, but I can confirm." "No," Denise said, calm and sharp at the same time. "Marianne confirmed the last agreement. Marianne fixed the errors your team kept sending us. If she's not on this call, we can reschedule." Grant's voice tightened. "She's unavailable today, but we—" Denise cut in again, still controlled. "Then we pause renewal." "Today," Marcia from procurement added, like she was reading from a checklist. "Our legal team won't move forward without operational confirmation in writing. That's been consistent for us." Grant tried to speak, but you could hear the panic hiding under his polished tone. "We can provide documentation," he said. "We have all the terms in our system." "Evan can," Denise let him finish, then said, "That's not what I asked. I asked for Marianne." My heart didn't race. That was the strange part. I'd expected my chest to feel tight, my hands to sweat, my mind to spin. Instead, I felt calm, like my body finally understood something my brain had been fighting for years. They didn't see me as support. Falcon Ridge saw me as the lock on the door, and Grant had just tried to remove the lock. My screen flashed with a private chat message. "Grant, Marianne, jump in and smooth it over. Please. Please. He hadn't said please at 2:12 p.m. He hadn't said please at 3:07 p.m. Now, with an $850 renewal hanging in the air, he found the word. I didn't rush. I took one full breath, then clicked unmute. Denise, I said, steady and clear, this is Marianne Holt. I'm here. There was a pause, and then Denise's voice softened just slightly, not friendly, but respectful. Thank you, she said. Can you confirm the exceptions remain? Yes, I said. The exceptions tied to your phase billing and audit windows remain unchanged unless we both sign an amendment. Nothing has been approved to change them. I could almost feel Grant's jaw tighten through the audio. Denise said, good. And who is authorized to confirm that on your side? I am, I said simply. It's in Addendum C. I can send you written confirmation after this call. Marcia made a small sound of relief. That's what we needed. Grant jumped in fast, trying to take the wheel back. Great. So we're aligned. I cut in once. Not rude. Just firm. Before we move on, Denise, I need 1 minute after this call. There's a risk item I want to flag so it doesn't become a billing problem later. The line went quiet again. Because a woman like Denise hears the word risk and understands it isn't small talk. Agreed, she said. 1 minute after. Grant didn't speak for a beat. For the first time all day, he sounded like a man who realized he wasn't in control of the room. We finished the rest of the call quickly. Pricing was discussed but not finalized. Denise wanted the written confirmation and the follow-up minute. When the call ended, it didn't end with smiles. It ended with urgency, and as soon as I clicked leave, my inbox began to explode like someone had kicked a hornet nest inside the company. By 4:23 p.m., the whole building felt different. You could feel it in the air, even if nobody said it out loud. Slack lit up like a fire alarm. Falcon Ridge paused? Is this real? Grant is in Alan's office right now. Who's on that account? Someone from sales messaged me with a single word. Marianne? My phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another call, this time from HR. I let that go too. Then a voicemail came through from Leela, the same HR rep who wouldn't meet my eyes at 2:12. Marianne, hi, it's Leela. Please call me back as soon as you can. It's urgent. Urgent. They loved that word when the fire was already burning. Evan pinged me on Slack. Can we talk? Just quick. I stared at the message for a moment and felt something solid settle in my chest. Not joy, not revenge, just certainty. I had never been support. I was the bridge holding a major account steady. Falcon Ridge wasn't just $850 in annual revenue. They were also the reference client Grant used in board updates, the proof that our renewals were strong. The story he told investors when he wanted to look like a genius. If Falcon Ridge paused, the story cracked. At 4:31 p.m., an email popped into my inbox from Alan Whitmore, our CEO. Subject line, need you. 2 words. No greeting, no fluff. I stood up and walked toward the executive floor. The hallway looked the same, but people didn't. A few heads turned. A few people stared a second too long, then snapped their eyes away. The same coworkers who avoided me when Grant cut my bonus now looked like they were measuring me in a new way. I reached the executive floor, and the receptionist didn't stop me. She just lifted a hand toward Alan's office like she'd been told. Inside, Grant was already there. He stood near the window, phone in hand, speaking fast, voice low but tense. He looked like a man trying to stitch a rip in a suit while still wearing it. Alan sat behind his desk, face unreadable. He held a printed page in his hand. When I walked in, Alan looked up. Marianne, he said, and the tone was different from the usual. Not casual. Not friendly. Serious. Grant stopped talking mid-sentence. Alan's eyes went to me, then to Grant, then back to me. Did we cut your bonus? Alan asked. Just like that. No warm-up. No, how are you? I felt my throat tighten for half a second, but my voice stayed steady. Yes, I said. It was set to 0. Grant stepped forward quickly. Alan. There's context. We're aligning comp to. Alan lifted one hand, stopping him without even looking. Grant, he said, quiet and sharp, let her answer. Grant's mouth closed. Alan's gaze returned to me. Why are you not on Falcon Ridge? Why did their CFO ask for you specifically? I didn't insult anyone. I didn't make it personal. I kept it clean. Falcon Ridge's renewal terms are built around exceptions I designed, I said. They require operational confirmation per the addendum. Denise trusts that confirmation because I've handled it for years. Alan's jaw tightened. Not at me. At the situation. I could feel the shift in the room. The moment when leadership stops seeing a person as a line item and starts seeing them as a risk they can't ignore. Alan leaned back. What do you want? He asked. Not what do you need, what do you want? I met his eyes. My bonus restored, my role protected in writing, and client ownership respected. Grant made a small sound, like he wanted to argue. Alan turned his head slightly. Grant? One word, and Grant fell silent again. Alan looked back at me. You're going back on that client, he said. Fix this. I nodded once. Because I could fix it, but this time, I wasn't fixing it for Grant, I was fixing it for myself. Alan didn't let me leave his office right away. He motioned to the chair across from him, the one usually reserved for VPs explaining mistake. I sat down slowly, keeping my hands folded in my lap so nobody could see how tight my fingers felt. Grant remained standing near the window, like he wanted to look relaxed, but his foot kept tapping, small and fast, against the carpet. Alan set the printed page on his desk. It was the email chain about the Falcon Ridge call, the one where my name was removed. My screenshot was there too. Addendum C, highlighted. Walk me through this, Alan said. Start from the beginning. So I did. I told him about the 2:12 p.m. meeting. I didn't exaggerate it. I repeated Grant's words the same way he said them. After 16 years, you should be grateful you're still here. Alan's eyes flicked to Grant for half a second, then back to me. I showed him the comp sheet. The 0. The language about role simplification. I explained what it meant in plain terms. It reads like a plan to move my responsibilities without naming it, I said. And it wasn't just the bonus. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the workflow system. I showed Alan the reassigned approvals. The new owner name sitting where mine used to be. Evan Pierce. Grant's rising star. Alan stared at the screen. When did that change happen? I don't know the exact date, I said, but it wasn't there last month. Grant finally spoke, trying to sound calm. Alan, we're modernizing processes. Marianne has done great work, but we can't run the company on single points of failure. I felt my shoulders tighten, but I stayed quiet. Alan turned toward him slowly. Grant, he said, you cut her bonus to 0 and removed her from a renewal call the client demanded her for. That is not modernization. That's poor judgment. Grant's face pulled tight, like he'd been slapped in public. Alan pressed his intercom. Janet, can you ask legal to join us? And HR. Now. In less than 10 minutes, the room changed from a private argument into a risk meeting. Our general counsel, Priya Desai, came in with a notepad and that focused look lawyers get when they sense danger. HR arrived too, not Leela this time, but a senior director named Tom, who suddenly acted like I'd always been important. Alan asked me to repeat one detail. Addendum C, I said, required operational sign-off. Priya held out her hand. Can you send me the full addendum? I emailed it right away. Priya skimmed it fast, then slowed down at the section I'd highlighted. Her eyebrows lifted. This is explicit, she said. If Falcon Ridge is asking for confirmation from the named operational owner, and we intentionally bypass that, we create exposure. At minimum, we risk breach of expectation. At worst, it looks like misrepresentation. Grant opened his mouth. That's dramatic. It's a renewal call, not a... Priya didn't even look at him. It's a contract relationship, she said, flat. And it's an $850K relationship. The room went quiet again. But this silence wasn't for me. It was for Grant. Tom from HR cleared his throat. Marianne, were you told you could not join the call? I was removed from the invite, I said. In writing, with HR copied, Tom's face tightened like he'd swallowed something unpleasant. Understood. Alan leaned forward, elbows on his desk. Grant, he said, why did you do this? Grant tried to frame it like business. Cost control. We're under pressure. We have to reduce overhead. Alan's eyes narrowed. What was the savings? What did you save by cutting her bonus? Grant hesitated. Because the truth was ugly. It wasn't a major savings. Not compared to the risk. Not compared to the damage he'd just caused. I didn't jump in to punish him. I didn't need to. Reality was doing it. And in that moment, sitting in that chair with legal and HR present, I admitted something I hadn't said out loud all day. I stayed through layoffs, I said quietly. I stayed through holidays spent fixing billing runs. I stayed through a health scare 2 years ago because I believed loyalty mattered here. My voice didn't crack, but it came close. Being told to feel grateful after 16 years, I added, broke something in me. Alan looked at me for a long second, then nodded, like he finally understood the human cost behind the numbers. He turned to HR. Draft a role protection letter for Marianne, he said, effective immediately, and pause any restructuring tied to her position. Then to Priya, review any client agreements with named operational owners. Today, Grant's face drained of color. He wasn't being fired, not yet, but he was losing control in front of people who never watched him lose control before. And I could feel it, not like revenge, like a truth that couldn't be pushed back into the dark. The next morning, my bonus was back. Not as a promise, not as we'll revisit, in writing. At 8:06 a.m., an email from HR hit my inbox with a PDF attached. Compensation correction. Marianne Holt. Inside was a revised statement showing my original bonus reinstated, plus a retention payment tied to client continuity. The tone of the email was carefully polite, like they were trying to erase the fact that yesterday had ever happened. But the real change wasn't the money. It was the second document. A role protection letter, signed by Alan. It stated my responsibilities clearly. Enterprise billing exceptions, renewal confirmations for top-tier accounts, and final operational sign-off on any contract terms impacting invoicing. It also stated that any reassignment of those duties required my written acknowledgement and executive approval. That wasn't just respect. That was protection. By 9:30 a.m., I had a short meeting with Alan and Priya. Grant wasn't there. Alan didn't apologize in a dramatic way. He didn't give a speech. He just said one sentence that told me he understood. You were treated like a cost, he said, and you're not. Then he told me my title was changing, Director of Revenue Operations Compliance. The words were simple, but what they meant was clear. My work would no longer be hidden behind the word support. Falcon Ridge rescheduled within 24 hours. That afternoon, I joined the new call with my camera on this time. Shoulders relaxed, face calm. Denise was there. Marcia was there. Their legal counsel was there too. Denise looked at me through the screen and gave a small nod. Not warm, but respectful. Marianne, she said, thank you for joining. Of course, I replied. I appreciate you making time. We went straight to the point. I confirmed the billing exceptions again, in clear language. I explained what was locked and what would require an amendment. I didn't drown them in jargon. I just made it easy to trust me. Then I added one protection. Quiet, but firm. Going forward, I said, any billing exception changes will route through my office for confirmation before they're presented as final. That prevents confusion on both sides. Denise didn't hesitate. Agreed, she said. That's what we want. Marcia looked relieved, like someone had finally put the guardrail back on the road. The renewal went through. Later that evening, Alan sent a short company-wide note. No names beyond mine, No drama, just a simple message about operational leadership that protects revenue and how discipline and execution earns client trust. When I read it, I didn't feel proud in a loud way. I felt seen. Grant didn't get marched out with a box. That doesn't happen as often as people think. What happened was quieter and, in some ways, worse for someone like him. He lost access. He was removed from client-facing renewals and placed under review by the board's audit committee. Priya didn't say it out loud, but I could see it. The board didn't like risk created by ego. Evan stopped hovering around my desk after that. He still smiled, but it didn't look confident anymore. It looked cautious. That night, I drove home the same route I always drove, same traffic lights, same grocery store sign, same stretch of road where the sun hits the windshield just right. I pulled into my driveway and sat in my car for a full minute with the engine off. Not because I was tired, because I was letting the feelings settle. For 16 years, I had made myself small so the company could feel smooth. I had protected people who didn't protect me. I had mistaken silence for safety. And now I understood the lesson in the simplest way. If your value is hidden, people will treat you like you're optional, until the day your absence costs them money. And that day, you don't need to yell. You just need to stop saving people who won't save you.